My name is Dan Abbott. I teach at Southern Maine Community College in the Architectural and Engineering Design Department. I'm making this video to show you the steps we went through and what we learned in the process of manufacturing a fitting at the request of Maine Medical Center through our chair of our respiratory therapy program. They asked me 2 weeks ago, could I come up with something and printed that they could use to connect 5 hoses together. I want to make a point. This is an emergency use only. Nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to put more than one person on a ventilator. This was simply to give them a little peace of mind that in the event that things were so catastrophic, they were faced with a decision of letting someone die or not letting them die, they have a plan in place that would allow them to address that. The starfish thing that we developed was at their request. They want to be able to go from 1 to 2 people, 1 to 3 people, or 1 to 4 people. By capping the ends, they can do that. This is a very simple plumbing fitting. I can model this in literally in 3 minutes now. It has a specific taper on the end and it's got some other considerations. They've been testing for over 2 weeks. It has not leaked. I do not recommend fused deposition modeling because I attempted that initially and it didn't work. So we're done now. These have to be done with resin for me to feel confident in them. We use 2 different kinds of resin. The gray resin I started with because that's what we had. It's less expensive. And at the time I thought you could autoclave it, but I had that tested by Jackson Labs and they simply failed in every single case. So these we have a couple hundred of. We are sanitizing these, not sterilizing them, and making that clear when we ship them to hospitals if they should ask for them, that that's what we've done. This one is made with a surgical guide resin, which is designed specifically for dentists to create things that they put in people's mouths to guide drills when they're doing dental surgery. As a result, it can be autoclaved, it's biocompatible, it's been approved for that purpose for many, many years. So this is what we're using now. It's a little more expensive, but it is something I feel comfortable we can send to a hospital in sterile condition because SMCC is going to autoclave these. And we're going to put them in autoclave bags, and when they leave here, they will be sterile. I also want to caution about a couple things. One is that this by itself did not make them a ventilator that could support more than one person. This simply gave Maine Med the one fixture that they did not have to get started on designing that process. Their design, which by all accounts has been exceptionally thorough, was very complex, required extremely experienced respiratory therapists and physicians and engineers to come up with something that they could be comfortable with. All this did was allow them to get started. There's the one piece that they didn't have yet. So this is not by itself a big deal, or even a ventilator or anything else. It's just what allowed them to get started. As far as precautions go, when you're using these printers, it gets really easy if you're doing a lot of these and feeling a little pressure to forget to do things like lock down the bed. Make sure you've locked down that bed before you start going. Make sure the bed is in there. Make sure that you don't leave one of these open overnight and walk away because the resin will then harden and that tray, which is $100, will be discarded. Make sure if you do this without using the form file that I provided, that you put scaffolding under it and don't forget that step, because if you try to print without scaffolding, you'll also ruin the tray. Those are the concerns I have, and I hope we never have to use these. Nobody ever wants to. Thanks. This is a Form 2 FormLabs printer. It's an earlier model. We also have Form 3s we'll see a little later on. This print job was all night. It went 8 hours and 43 minutes and it produced 6 of the starfish manifold. So at this point, we just take it out. I'm going to close this down because that prevents UV light from hitting the resin that's in there. I'm going to take this over and wash it. It has to be washed in 91% minimum alcohol. Isopropyl, by the way, so it can't be ethanol, it can't be ethyl, it can't be anything that distilleries can make, because I've had that suggestion from people. It has to be isopropyl. And 99% is what we're using, so that we are well above the 91% level. So this has to now be washed. This is the Form Wash, which is a appliance made by FormLabs, the same company. It does an automatic alcohol wash, and this is the alcohol that has to be at least 91%. We use 99%, and we check periodically. We check it, the hydrometer that was provided by them, to make sure that the alcohol content doesn't drop below 91%. This is an automatic station. What it does, it's going to lower that into the alcohol. It does a little bit of a vibration, a little bit of heat, and it spends exactly 20 minutes, which is what you need. This is an automatic station, but the ones you get when you buy the printer is a stationary. The way that you can use this is one of two ways. You either put the whole bed in there, press the button, and then it lowers down, or you can take it off, put it in there, and then start the whole thing, and it just lowers in and starts the process of soaking it. I'm going to step over here where there's a stationary station, one of the standard ones that you get. I'll show you how you have to remove this. And you don't have to, you can break it apart, but it's kind of important from my point of view that this comes off as one piece because it's much easier to handle. This is the station that normally comes with it, and this one you have to manually dip it, and you have two reservoirs because you dip it first in the one that is most cloudy for 10 minutes, agitate it, let it sit and time it, and then you move it to the cleaner one for the last 10 minutes, also agitate it. This is a group that's already been dipped twice and dried. So in order to put those in there, this surgical guide comes off of the bed with a little bit of difficulty, and the tool used is the one provided by FormLabs. So what I'm going to do is show you that what you need to do is sort of gently start prying the raft off of the base until the whole thing starts to come loose, just like that. And once it does, if you slide the tool in and then twist it, it should pop right off in one unit. That's if you use the form file that I created. I created that in SolidWorks as a single part, rather than bring an individual part into the preform software and then duplicate it. Because by having it as a single part, I can move them closer together and then have them all joined with a common raft. Because it has a common raft, if you're careful, the whole thing can be dealt with as a group until you're done and break them apart and then start preparing them.
Okay, so this is the washing station. This is 99% alcohol, and they go in for 20 minutes. And you can see the lemon yellow color means they have not yet been cured, which is a great way to keep track of what you've done with what. So we let this dry for a while before putting it in the curing station.
Now that these have been washed and dried, and again washed for 20 minutes, dried for at least 30, these have been drying now for a couple of hours. We're going to put them in the form cure, which is the oven that creates a UV environment, and that's what the reflect is for, and also creates some heat at 70 degrees centigrade. This is a group that's already been cured. There's a very clear color shift when that happens, so it's obvious when you're working with this which ones have and which ones haven't been cured. I'm going to place this aside. The one time, thinking it was a helpful way to go, I put this in with the base. Do not do that. The base will come apart with that kind of heat, because it did. So this should be removed from the base, set in place, drop down, set it for surgical, and the surgical is up here, 30 minutes at 70 degrees, start it, and then it just goes through the cycle and stops. So these are very hot when this is done, so if you open it immediately, don't just grab it, use a set of tongs to take it out, but if it's been sitting for a while, it'll cool down. We, in order to facilitate the process, since I don't have enough time to have every single one of our 6 machines go through this cycle 30 minutes each, I have now purchased 4 additional curing stations. So we now have 5 curing stations we can use to cure the things that come out of the printers. This is a set of cured, and this one has 8 of them. And what I'm going to do now is remove them. This is a tricky part. My wife has been preparing them, but this part takes a fair amount of hand strength. It also requires that you put on safety glasses because they're very sharp little pieces that will come flying off of this. So we're using the standard heavy-duty kitchen shears, and what I've been doing is just breaking through the scaffolding to remove the raft from the part itself. And then once there's enough broken off, I can just bend it apart and have it break, and then hand it to my wife, and off she goes.
Okay, so this is the finishing station, and you saw Dan separate the big stuff, but there's a lot of little stuff here. This is the scaffolding that held this all together in the printer. So it has to be clipped off, and you can see it goes everywhere, which is why I'm wearing safety glasses. And then some of the ports have scaffolding in them. You just take a pair of needle nose pliers, give it a good twist. It comes out fairly easily. And there's, there we go. All right. And now what we have is, you can't see them probably, but there's a lot of little bumps hither and yon. And those have to be sanded down. So first, the inside ones, I take a spade bit and just give it a twist. All 5 ports. Make sure that looks okay. And I it helps to have small hands for this part actually, because I can put my pinky in there, and I just felt another little nodule there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take some sandpaper. So I'm going to sand off the little knobs. It takes a bit of time, and I'm going to do this with every port. Yeah, and some of them are a little more than others. You kind of have to really get at it. Because the point of all of this sanding is that what we want is for an airtight so I can't, King Kong couldn't pull this off. It has to be twisted off. But the idea is for it to twist off easily, relatively easily, and off and on. And you don't want, if there's any bumps and things here, it's possible there could be the slightest little air leak, and that's what you do not want on a ventilator. And these have been tested. I think it's 0.7 psi, and these have been tested up to like 300 psi, and they don't leak. So that's, and then what I do is I'm going to put it just swish it around in alcohol and put it on the drying rack. These don't have to be sanitized right now because they're going to go into autoclave bags and put in an autoclave, and they will be not just sanitized but sterilized when they leave here. These are made out of gray resin. The drawback is that they can't be autoclaved, but they can be sanitized. And they're also much easier to work with. You can see the scaffolding comes off very easily compared to the surgical. I use my little, where is it? Yeah. I use this. These come off very easily. There we go. Take my spade bit. And that just gets those little bumps off pretty easily. 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to sand them same way. You'll find that 2 of the ports take a little more sanding because that's where all the scaffolding is, and 2 of the ports are pretty much oh, that's nice. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is a gray resin that's all set to go. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to soak it in my alcohol bucket for at least 20 minutes, and then I'm going to put it on the drying rack. After it's dried, what I will do is put 2 at a time in these little Ziploc bags. I will have my gloves soaked with alcohol. Put them 2 at a time and put 5 per bag. And now you've got 5 sets ready to go. And it'll say when it was sanitized in 99% alcohol. It says these starfish splitters have been sanitized for at least 20 minutes in 99% alcohol. Do not autoclave. And then we put them aside for whoever is going to need them.